Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope your day and your week have been going very well so far. Got a new day, which of course means a new NBA player prop video to share with you guys. But first, as always, people, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below to help the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. With a new day comes some new opportunities to go ahead and make some money. I have 3 NBA player props as well as day 2 of our April NBA player prop ladder challenge to get to in today's video. So 3 single bets and a 3-leg parlay, tons of player props to go around. But first, guys, before we dive into today's picks, a quick little recap of how we did last night. And spoiler alert, we did pretty well. And yeah, guys, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I called my shot yesterday. I told you guys. I saw the board clearly. It spoke to me. We had a great night. Big night last night. 4-1 in our single bet category. We also cashed our 2-leg parlay plus 114 odds as part of our day 1 of our April ladder challenge. So really solid day. The only player prop we missed on was the Emmanuel Quickly prop over 28.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. He finished with 27, so he missed it by 2, and he only played 24 minutes in last night's game against Chicago. So had he played a couple more minutes, we would have probably had a clean sweep on our hands. But I can't be too picky because if you watched that incredible Nuggets-Timberwolves game last night, Anthony Edwards had 10 points and 5 assists going into the fourth quarter. And then obviously the game goes to double overtime and we get our cash. He ends up finishing with 34 points, which is crazy. But, you know, it is what it is. Listen, I can't be too greedy. We had a really good night last night looking down below at the records. 4-1, we won 2.44 units profit. We are now 184 and 152 on the year, up 12.25 units in our single bet category. And the parlay side of things, 16 and 36, up 9.08 units. You combine both parlay and single bet records together, we are up over 21 units profit this season. And thank God, because I don't know if you guys have been following my MLB videos, which you can go ahead and check out. We have them daily now. Had a bit of a very cold start to the Major League Baseball season. So it felt good to go ahead and have a big night and cash big in the NBA, even though MLB continues to be a little bit of a sore spot in the early parts of the season. But we're going to go ahead and turn it around in that video series as well. Guys, ton of great player props again today to go ahead and share with you. Let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right into today's picks. Jumping right into the Outlier screen, shout out to Outlier, the sponsor of today's video. Everything you will see in today's video, all the data, all the information is brought to you by Outlier. I use it for every single player prop video here on the channel. If you guys have seen it before, you know what Outlier can do for you. If you haven't, stick around and watch because there's so much great information, so much great data and insight that Outlier provides. And the best part is they're giving everybody a special 7-day free trial offer. Link down below in the description to go ahead and check it out for yourself. Guys, you want to make money sports betting, you gotta have the proper tools. You think I just woke up yesterday and I had an epiphany where all these player props just came to me? No, I used Outlier, I used the research, I used the data, and I found those picks. And you guys can too using Outlier. So check it out for yourself. 7-day free trial, link down below in the description. Thank you to Outlier for sponsoring today's video. All right, now finally on to the picks, guys. Our first player prop. Now we are starting with the parlay. So this is day 2 of our ladder challenge. We are putting 1.14 units on this parlay. It's a 3-leg parlay. Our first leg, we got Knicks Cavs, 7 p.m. tip-off. We're going Darius Garland of the Cleveland Cavaliers over 19.5 points plus rebounds. And yes, we are using DraftKings for this ladder challenge, minus 250 over on DraftKings. These are all alternate lines. I will make sure to let you guys know when we are done with the parlay and move on to the single bet category. We're going to finish with the single bets after. So Garland over 19.5 points plus rebounds. Obviously, this being an alternate line, you know the data is going to be pretty solid across the board here for Garland. He's cashed the over in 8 of his last 10 games, averaging 24 points plus rebounds per game over his last 10 games. You go ahead and you stretch the data out to the entire season view for Garland. A 70% hit rate for this line on the year. 49 out of 70 games he's cashed the over, averaging 23.51 points plus rebounds per game overall this season. So some pretty good numbers there for Garland from a head-to-head perspective. 2 of his last 3 matchups against the New York Knicks, he's cashed the over. That's a 67% hit rate, averaging 24.33 points plus rebounds per game across those last 3 matchups. Now, they played twice so far this year. Back on October 28th, very early in the year, he had a very big game, 34 points and 3 rebounds. However, their last meeting on February 21st was a blowout win for the Cavaliers. He only had 9 points and 4 rebounds. Didn't play a ton of minutes in that game either. But the data seems to be pretty solid, and the matchup is also very solid here. Versus point guards, the Knicks are okay, 16th in points allowed, 6th in rebounds allowed overall this year. But if you do go ahead and narrow the data down to the last 7 games, even the last 15 games, basically from the time that Jalen Brunson's gotten hurt, they are bottom 10 in the NBA in points allowed and bottom half of the league in rebounds allowed to the point guard position. And obviously the Knicks, a lot of injuries right here. No Brunson, no McBride, so no Cameron Payne. I don't know who's playing point guard for the Knicks tonight. But on top of that, Karl Anthony Towns could also be injured. That does have some risk for a blowout. Like, will he play enough minutes? Will he get enough stuff up in like 23, 24 minutes? If this is a blowout, I don't know. But I don't think the blowout risk is too bad because the Knicks, yes, they're missing Brunson. As long as Cat plays, even if Cat doesn't play, you still have Bridges, you still have Hart, you still have Anunoby. That's the beauty of the Knicks. They still have some really good players, even if they're down one or two guys. But I think it's a pretty solid matchup for Garland. The alternate line definitely helps. I don't think I would take this at its normal line. But at 19.5, I think it's a pretty solid value there, minus 250 for a reason. That's our first leg of our three-leg parlay. All right, guys, moving on to our second leg in today's parlay. We have Hawks Mavericks, 8:30 p.m. tip-off. We got Spencer Dinwiddie of the Dallas Mavericks over 14.5 points plus rebounds. Again, alternate line, minus 215 over on DraftKings here. And pretty good numbers here for Spencer Dinwiddie as well from the recent standpoint. Now, if you do go ahead and look at the overall data, not as impressive. But obviously, some of the injury stuff with Dallas comes into play here with his numbers. But he's cashed the line in 9 of his last 10 games, averaging 20 points plus rebounds per game over his last 10 games. Like I said, if you do go ahead and stretch the data out to the entire season view, it's not as impressive. 43% hit rate, just 32 of 74 games this year. He's cashed the over, averaging 13.65 points plus rebounds per game overall this season. And if you do look at the chart down below, there's obviously a lot of red there with a lot more green coming over the last 10 games or so. Now, the head-to-head data actually isn't all that bad. 3 of his last 4 matchups against the Atlanta Hawks dating back to last season. Of course, he was on the Brooklyn Nets last year. 75% hit rate across those last 4 matchups, averaging 19 points plus rebounds per game over those last 4 meetings. He has played them once this year as a member of the Dallas Mavericks back on November 25th. He had a pretty good game too, 22 points and 3 rebounds in that game. Now, a couple things to note here. First and foremost, the matchup. Atlanta overall, one of the bottom 5 scoring defense teams in terms of points allowed. Versus point guards, they ranked better on the overall numbers for the year, 10th in points, 21st in rebounds. However, if you do narrow the data down to the last 7 games, Atlanta bottom half of the league. Actually, I believe they're bottom 10 in points allowed to point guards. So yes, the overall numbers seem to suggest they're okay defensively against point guards, but if you do narrow it down to the more recent trends, this is a pretty good defensive matchup here for Spencer Dinwiddie. And beyond that, you have the fact that Kyrie Irving obviously out for the year, and the numbers have been pretty good for him when Kyrie Irving does not play. Look at the overall numbers in 2024-25, a 69, pause for applause, 69% hit rate, 18 out of 26 games this year. He's cashed the over when Kyrie Irving is not playing, averaging 18.15 points plus rebounds per game without Kyrie. So you do see, of course, the more recent data, those last 10 games where he's 9 of his last 10 like we talked about. Obviously, Kyrie Irving, that's kind of from the time Kyrie got hurt. Spencer Dinwiddie's been on a cash streak here. But to narrow the data down even further, Dante Exum, one of the other big point guards for the Mavericks, he's also out in tonight's game. So looking at the data this year, without Kyrie Irving and without Dante Exum, he's played 19 games without both of those guys in the lineup, 74% hit rate, averaging 18.47 points plus rebounds per game. So without Kyrie Irving, really good numbers. Without Kyrie and Dante Exum, even better numbers. I think you got a pretty good matchup on your hands here. That's the second leg of today's parlay. And guys, the third and final leg of our Day 2 Ladder Challenge parlay comes from the Pelicans-Clippers game, 10:30 p.m. tip-off. We're going Kawhi Leonard of the LA Clippers over 29.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, which again, alternate line, minus 225 over on DraftKings. Kind of similar to the last player prop. The recent data really strong for Kawhi Leonard, almost at Kyrie Irving. Kawhi Leonard, the overall numbers are okay. Now, the last 10 games, really good. He's cashed it in 9 consecutive games coming into today's matchup, averaging 36.3 PRAs per game over his last 10 games. So he's on a really good run of late. Now, if you do go ahead and stretch the data out to the entire season view, not a very large sample size. He's only played 31 games this year, but a 48% hit rate on this line. 15 out of 31 games this year. He's cashed the over, averaging 29.39 PRAs per game across the entire season. Like I said, last 9 games, really good numbers. Obviously, before this little run here, the numbers on this line were pretty tragic. But he's been playing very well of late, so it is a pretty good time to kind of hop on the trend and ride it. So we'll pause again. Kawhi Leonard, head-to-head data also pretty solid. 4 of his last 5 matchups against the Pelicans, he's cashed this line. That's an 80% hit rate, averaging 31.6 PRAs per game over the last 5 matchups against New Orleans. Now, it should be noted, only one of these 5 matchups is this year, actually a little over a month ago, a little less than a month ago, I should say. Back on March 11th, he had 29 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists against New Orleans. Now, New Orleans, a very different team this morning, right? No McCollum, no DeJounte Murray, no Zion Williamson. They're obviously now punting on the rest of the year and tanking, hopefully for Cooper Flagg, I guess. The biggest risk in this one, guys, is the blowout potential. New Orleans overall defensively not a very good team. Bottom 5 in all 3 main categories there, as you can see. And the insights provided by Outlier, Kawhi Leonard has exceeded 32.5 points plus rebounds in 8 of his last 9 games. So he's exceeding the 32.5 line. We are getting it at 29.5, which just even makes the numbers even better for us. And Kawhi plays between the 3 and the 4 spot versus the 3. The Pelicans bottom 3 in points allowed, rebounds and assists, they rank okay versus power forwards, which he also plays a little bit of sometimes. They also rank 28th, 22nd, and 19th respectively in points, rebounds, assists allowed to that position. So I think whatever way you want to shake it, pretty good matchup. The biggest risk here, guys, honestly, is the risk of a blowout. Will they play Kawhi Leonard a decent amount of minutes? That's kind of the big thing here in this spot. It's a big risk of taking this player prop. Obviously, if you guys want to exclude that from the parlay, you can. But that's the biggest thing at risk here is if the Clippers start blowing them out of the water, which is very possible, maybe even likely, will Leonard play enough to cash this line? I still think he will. I don't think he needs to play 30-plus minutes to cash the line. It's a pretty good matchup. I think as long as he plays in the ballpark of 25, 27 minutes, we should be good here. And jumping over to DraftKings here are the final results of our 3-leg parlay. Again, we have Kawhi Leonard over 29.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. Spencer Dinwiddie over 14.5 points plus rebounds. And Darius Garland over 19.5 points plus rebounds. You parlay all 3 together, you get a parlay of plus 196 odds over on DraftKings. Again, we are putting 1.14 units on this parlay as part of day 2 of our April ladder challenge. If we win this one, all the profit from this one we put on tomorrow's parlay. Now, some of you guys might put 2.14 units. It all depends on what you like to do. My strategy when it comes to ladder challenges, always, I talk about it every time I do a ladder challenge here on the channel. I take that initial unit that I invest and I take it back and I put it right back in my pocket. That way, we're playing with house money here. If we lose, we don't really lose anything, right? We still have that initial investment back in our pocket. If you guys are feeling balls, you can obviously put everything. You can put the unit you initially invested plus the profit from yesterday, and now you have 2.14 units on today's parlay. It's totally up to you guys. I like to at least make my money back and know that regardless of what happens, I broke even. And we're playing with house money now. And if I win, great. If I lose, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. So that's how I go about it. It's totally up to you guys. I'm putting 1.14 units. Obviously, if you don't take that initial unit back, you're putting 2.14 units on this parlay. But that's our day 2 ladder challenge parlay. We're now going to go ahead and finish up with our 3 single bets in today's video. But if you guys are watching this point in today's video, we had a really solid night last night. Comment Fuego, F-U-E-G-O, Fuego, down below in the comments. I believe that's how you spell Fuego. Is it E-U or U-E? Nope, I had it right. U-E. So F-U-E-G-O, Fuego. If you're still watching today's video at this point, as always, we appreciate those who watch through each and every single video here on the channel. It really does mean a lot. But yeah, really stellar night last night. I play soccer on Tuesday nights. I literally had the game-winning goal. No lie, game-winning goal in the game. So like it was just a great night for me. I woke up just pissing excellence. So had a really strong night last night. Let's see if we can build on that tonight. 3 more player props coming your way right now though. All right, guys, our first single bet, again, that was the parlay. We're now moving on to the single bet portion of today's video. Our first single bet player prop comes from the Hornets-Pacers game, 7 p.m. tip-off. We're going Mark Williams of the Charlotte Hornets over 26.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, which we're getting for minus 125 over on DraftKings. It is available on multiple sports books for varying odds. And the data is pretty solid, honestly, on this player prop. 7 of his last 10 games, Mark Williams has cashed the over, averaging 29.6 PRAs per game over his last 10 games. If you do go ahead and stretch the data out to the entire season view, not as impressive, but not awful. I mean, 50% hit rate, 20 out of 40 games he cashed the over, averaging 28.1 PRAs per game this year. Basically, every time you bet this player prop, it's a coin flip as to whether it hits or not, which is, I know, risky. Sounds risky. But honestly, for minus 125, the data isn't all that bad. From a head-to-head standpoint, very low sample size, and I don't even know how relevant it is. He only played the Pacers once in the last year and a half, 2 years. And that was back on November 4th of last season. He did have a big game, though, 27.7 rebounds and 1 assist. But again, I don't know how much you can really go off of that. But the data in the matchup across the board seems pretty solid. In the insights provided by Outlier, Mark Williams has exceeded 26.5 points plus rebounds plus assists in 6 of his last 7 games on the road, averaging 33.3 PRAs per game over his last 7 road games. That is an 86% hit rate. So some pretty good numbers there. Defensively, the Pacers this year, bottom 10 in both points and rebounds allowed to centers. The assist part's not really a huge deal. That's in there just in case, it's a close line, and all it takes is 2 assists to get us over the mark. That's why I put the assist mark in there. But yeah, Indiana defensively has been a bit of a nightmare versus centers this year in terms of they don't really guard the center position all that well. Let's address the elephant in the room. The biggest problem with this player prop is Mark Williams. How many minutes is he going to play? how healthy is he? That's always the big thing with Mark Williams. When he's healthy on the court and he plays his minutes, he's really, really good. The problem is he just isn't consistent with how many minutes he plays, how often he plays. But he's not in the injury report at the time of recording. So hoping that we're going to be good to go. And obviously, you look at the numbers this year, a lot of guys being out. We'll go ahead and put the filter for Brandon Miller. And let me just scroll down a little bit here. No Brandon Miller and no LaMelo Ball, because those two are obviously out. And you look at the numbers this year for Mark Williams, when those two guys are not playing, so far this season, he's played 12 games without LaMelo Ball and without Brandon Miller. You do see a 67% hit rate on the over, averaging 29.42 PRAs per game. With those two guys being out, somebody's got to put up numbers. Somebody's got to get stats for this team. It's either Miles Bridges or Mark Williams. I do like Mark Williams a lot in this spot. So that's our first single bet player prop in today's video. All right, guys, our second single bet player prop in today's video, we have Heat Celtics, 7:30 p.m. tip-off. We got Derek White of the Boston Celtics over 19.5 points plus assists. A little rich for my blood, a little rich, but not too bad. Minus 145 over on DraftKings. Being a borderline alternate line, the data is really strong. 8 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 22.5 points plus assists per game over his last 10 games. This year so far, if you go ahead and stretch the data out to the entire season view, a 69... I'm going to go ahead and pause for the applause here. 69% hit rate on the season for Derek White. 49 out of 71 games he's cashed the over, averaging 21.07 points plus assists per game overall this year. And if all that green data didn't do it for you, the head-to-head data also very solid. 8 of his last 11 matchups against the Miami Heat, including playoffs, he's cashed the over. It's a 73% hit rate across their last 11 meetings, averaging 23.55 points plus assists per game over their last 11 meetings. Including playoffs, he's cashed this in 5 consecutive matchups with Miami, including all 3 times they've played this year. December 2nd, he had 19 points and 8 assists. February 10th, he had 13 points and 7 assists. In their most recent matchup, less than a month ago on March 14th, he had 18 points and 4 assists. So 100% hit rate this year against Miami in the matchup, the Heat. Overall, they do rank very well defensively versus shooting guards. However, we do go ahead and narrow it down to the last 7 or 15 games. We'll do last 7. We'll do the most recent data. Last 7 games, they rank 10th in the NBA in points allowed to shooting guards. Or actually, I'm sorry. Let me rewind that, rephrase it. 20th in the NBA. So they're bottom 10 in the NBA over the last 7 games in terms of points allowed to the shooting guard position. They still rank pretty well defensively in the assist category. But again, you look at these games. Some of these games, he does have a lot of assists. But I think scoring-wise, he should score somewhere in the ballpark of 15 points in this game, and then at that point, 4 assists, 3 assists, something like that. I think scoring, obviously, is going to do the majority of the work, but a couple assists here and there, and I think we've got ourselves a pretty good player prop. The data across the board is really, really good. A little extra juice, you're going to have to put maybe a little extra down at minus 140 or sacrifice some profit, but I do think it's a pretty good player prop to go ahead and tail. And our final player prop from today's video, we're going to the Jazz-Rockets game, 8 p.m. tip-off. We got Jalen Green of the Houston Rockets over 31.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, which we are getting for minus 115 odds over on BetMGM. Again, recent data very strong here for Jalen Green. The overall data not as good, but still not too terrible. 8 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 34.9 PRAs per game over his last 10 games. So like I said, recent data, pretty solid. If you do go ahead, though, and stretch the data out to the entire season view, 49% hit rate. Again, almost half the time he's hitting this player prop, but, not the best numbers. 37 out of 76 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 29.66 PRAs per game this year. So not terrible data. The recent data obviously very strong with the head-to-head numbers. 4 of his last 6 matchups against the Utah Jazz, including each of the last 2, or I should say both matchups this year. 100% hit rate this year, 67% hit rate over the last 6 matchups, averaging 31.67 PRAs per game over those last 6 matchups. He's had some pretty big games. Look at last year, some really big performance against Utah. Even this year, their most recent matchup just a couple days ago on March 27th, he had 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. And it makes sense. Utah, literally, in all 3 categories, the worst defensive team in the NBA to the shooting guard position. If you do narrow it down to the last 7 games, it's not as bad as the overall numbers are, but it's still not good. It's still bottom half of the league in all 3 categories. But the overall numbers are really bad, so it's a pretty good matchup here for Jalen Green. Again, both times he's played them this year, he's had success. We also have the insights provided by Outlier, which is a really good stat here. Jalen Green has exceeded 31.5 points plus rebounds plus assists in 16 of his last 19 games versus bottom 10 defenses for assists allowed. He's averaging a whopping 36.3 PRAs per game over the last 19 games against bottom 10 defenses for assists allowed. It's an 84% hit rate. And Utah this year, the worst defense in the NBA in terms of assists allowed to opposing teams. So really good matchup here. The biggest risk, like we talked about with a couple of these player props today, is Utah obviously one of the bottom. I think they might even have the worst record in the Western Conference. This team's obviously bottoming out. If this is a blowout, how many minutes does Jalen Green play and how does it affect his numbers? That's the biggest risk with this player prop, is the risk of a blowout here. But the matchup is so solid. The data is so solid. I'm going to go ahead and rock with it for minus 115 odds too. You can't beat that value. Again, massive risk in terms of will he play enough minutes to cash the line. But if he plays even the ballpark of like 27 minutes or 30 minutes, we should be good to go. If he plays less than 27 minutes, we could be chalked here. But I do like the player prop overall. All right, guys, that is it for me today. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. One more time, guys, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. We'll be back tomorrow with another NBA player prop video. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have day 3 of our ladder challenge if we cash in tonight's video. But no matter what, win or lose tonight, we will be back tomorrow with another NBA player prop video. Until then, guys, I hope you're all winners. Enjoy your Wednesday. Let's go ahead and make some money.